So
Great.
welcome to our session today. This is quick, actionable feedback on college essays. I'm John from Marco Learning, and I'm thrilled that we have Barak Rosenblum here. Barak is an expert in all things related to college admissions, but especially in the journey of having students write about themselves on their Common App and other essays. It's hard for a teenaged kid, especially now, to find their voice in 650 words or fewer. And Barak is, in addition to having been working in the front lines, in the trenches with all these students over many years, has built an incredible curriculum on his website. I ran into Barak at a conference. Now, I guess it was a year and a half ago.
A little over a year ago, yeah.
Little over a year ago. And I was just totally blown away by this. And I'm so honored that he's presenting here in this format and hopefully sharing some really great advice for all of you who are teachers and counselors and parents about how to provide really great feedback. So I'm going to hop into the chat. I'm going to turn it over to you, Barak, to introduce yourself and get started.
Great. Thank you, John. Let me turn that slide off. Oh, there I am. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much. Last year, John and I met at the NACAC conference. Let me take these off so you don't see my lights shining in my glasses. NACAC is the National Association of College Admissions Counseling. I never quite get it right. We met at a big conference, and this year, about a month ago, in the Houston National Conference, 8,000 people, I led a shorter version, the 30-minute version of this workshop, to 400 people. They just absolutely were mobbed, and most of them were college counselors working in high schools, and some independent counselors. Some of you may have been there. And so this, if you were there, this is the longer version of that. So a little more in depth, a little more detail. We're going to be sending you, and I'll be sharing resources after and during this webinar. So, feel free obviously to take notes, but there's so many resources that I have to share with you that you can use for yourself and with your students and with your parents. I'm all about making life easier. Like John said, I've my business, I work one-on-one with students for the most part. I've in a very intense personal mentoring program, but my real passion is finding ways to take the work that I've been doing at this very high-end program and make it widely accessible. So thousands and thousands of kids have written better essays using the content that we've created. And in the last couple of years, and this is, really meeting John was fabulous. My game is like how to support and help everyone working with kids, how to make this easier, how to make this less stressful so that they can write these incredibly important essays, but also in a way that is more meaningful for them. And maybe they learn something about themselves, and maybe they learn something about writing beyond the academic writing. So what I'm going to be doing is walking through, this webinar is about feedback. It's specifically focused on feedback. And like a lot of you are saying, is you're giving a lot of feedback right now. I'm giving a lot of feedback right now. My kids text me. I've trained them, don't text me at 1 a.m. But like, I really thought for a long time how to make it easier for me to give them feedback that they can do something with. So let me hop in. There we go. There's my little navigator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this one. This is before I even did this as a business. This is when I just started working with kids very casually, some students that I knew. And there's a young guy I met at actually his parents' party. They had a party in their community. I just moved to town, and this kid was so excited, Spencer, and he had just visited American University, and he was going to apply early, and he fell in love with it. It was a reach school. So he wrote his essay. He had already written a version over the summer. He rewrote it in English class with his very, very good English teacher. I mean, she's known in my town as being absolutely fantastic. His mother was a little concerned about it. She didn't think it had really captured him or the story, but why would he listen to her? It's his mother. That's absurd. She was writing a book on how to write well, but that really doesn't matter when it's your mom. And I had helped maybe a half dozen kids at that point, just very casually. And so he sent me his essay. And this is what he sent me. I will read this essay. And as I'm reading, if you write down comments, what feedback would you give him? You know, just kind of like quick little, like, yeah, I'd say this or that, just like the 1, 2, 3 word version of the feedback you might give him. Something that will always define me is the time I've spent as a camper at summer camp. Quintessentially part of any American childhood, summer camp is where I learned to be confident in myself, which has been incomparably beneficial. As student body president, I frequently have to give speeches or make decisions that implicate my entire school. And were I not able to be confident in myself, I wouldn't have the ambition or self-accountability I have today. Summer camp gave me that ability, and yet I had always taken that gift for granted. It wasn't until the summer before sophomore year that I learned how to apply it to change my world even further by passing it on. So he sent me this essay. The second paragraph really shows what a horrible, cruel, unkind, and lacking in compassion young man he is by not being very nice to a camper. It was so bad that I didn't want to even meet with him. It's pretty bad. Now, so I'd love any chats. If you have any thoughts, like what would you say? What would you say? I mean, obviously, the language is wonky. You know, he's using quintessentially and uses implicate completely wrong. Yeah, John, what feedback would you give? You know, he kind of sounds a bit like a jerk, like pretty bad. And what I did is I sat down with him and I had him read the first sentence and then the second sentence and then the third sentence. Jessica, very vague, passive voice. Okay, great. Let's get a few. What's the point? Passive voice, run-on sentences, not getting a clear picture of who you are, boring language, inflated diction, filled with platitudes, very dull, not overly original, implicate. Yeah, exactly. It's I have no idea what he means by implicate. Not only does everyone go to summer camp, I've led this workshop to probably 1,500 people in the Seattle area. I bet 25% of them have gone to Camp Orkyla, and the original version has the name of the camp. So exactly, all of these are absolutely valid and dead on. But here's the challenge, and that's how people tend to give feedback. But here's the challenge. Kids don't hear that. They don't know how to process it as educators or adults or just people giving feedback or counselors. It's pretty challenging to get into their world and give them the language. Remember, a lot of you said you're teachers, AP teachers, counselors. They are so used to having one way of thinking, and that's an academic way of thinking, an academic way of writing. And so anything you say, anything that comes out of your mouth is going to get garbled in some way and filtered and twisted until what they hear is a version of kind of academic writing. And that's not going to be very helpful for them because they also don't know what to do with it. So it's really challenging. So what I'm going to be doing is breaking down a very structured approach and a structured process that I would use with students. And I start out, let me actually read, not over here. I didn't mean that everyone goes, I meant that. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is go through a structured approach, kind of big picture, and then later on I'll get more detailed in how I give feedback and get everybody talking the same language. Because if they're not talking the same language, or if as an English teacher, I did the math, English teachers, I think if you work for a week with college essays every year and you only do seniors, that's 2% of your entire career. So you're just like, this isn't a big part of how you think. And you're in this academic environment and teaching in different ways. And all of a sudden there's this entirely different thing you have to do. So I'm going to go through on some of the fundamentals that students have to know. And I start with helping build a really strong foundation. And they have to know three things. The first thing they need to know is their audience, their intention, and their role. And their audience for college essay, college counselors probably know this or may know this, the English teachers maybe not. Tina Fey played an admissions officer in a movie. And this sad, pathetic, bored, overwhelmed woman you see here is the person who's maybe reading the essay. They read 1.3 million words of college essays every year, at least. That's every Harry Potter book plus the unabridged Moby Dick. And in one study, they found that about 80% of them aren't useful for one reason or another. So poor Tina Fey, the Tina Feys of the world, the audience, they're slogging through one thing after another. So some of the comments and the feedback that you said, yeah, it absolutely resonates. She's like, oh man, passive voice, that makes it harder to read. Oh yeah, I've read this story before. I don't know where you're going. It just is not going to work. So he had no clue of who his audience was. Second, know your intention. The intention is pretty, when you boil it down, it's pretty clear. It's to write an engaging, authentic short story that shows who you are. Now, I've spent a lot of time working with admissions officers, sharing the stories from our sample essay, the essays that my students write, really talking with them to understand, is this what they're really after? And they get so excited when they read one of these. That's fundamentally what they're looking for. 600, 650 words where they can read it, kind of enjoy the few minutes with that student, get a sense that this is who they are. Very different from a 5-paragraph essay. I was very good at those. I got out of high school and man, I could churn those out like a master, but never learned how to write one of those short stories. Just a different kind of beast. The third piece of what they need to know is they need to know the role that they're playing. And to write this kind of short story, it's kind of like the perspective is they're coming from it like a teenager telling their story to their peers around a campfire. Now, the challenge for them is they are not used to doing that in papers or in essays. If you're in English class, you're taking a literary perspective and a literary role. If you're writing a history paper, you're writing like a historian. And this is really foreign to kids. They're not used to it in writing. It actually is a little easier when you get to, when they realize, oh, you mean I really can just tell my stories? Gives them a lot of freedom. And this is the fundamental structure I use to look at essays, at the biggest, broadest picture. Because if they aren't writing for their audience, and if they don't know their intention, and they don't know their role, and they're just not doing that, then I'm not worrying yet about grammar. I'm not worrying, even if it's that unique or engaging, if they aren't doing that. Now, that essay that Spencer wrote, he fails on all of these. There's some questions. These are the questions I ask. Now, I have a workshop, and actually the webinar I'm doing tomorrow with Marco Learning for students and parents goes really in depth in this. It's a really fun webinar, led for thousands of people, and kids come out and it gets them in the same world. It gets them speaking the same language. So when I give feedback to kids now, they already know this world of audience, intention, and role. So I can say, look, has Tina Fey read this essay 1,000 times over? And they'll be able to say yes or no, or I think so. I can't tell. I'm not Tina Fey, but then I can have a conversation so they understand it. Know your intention. I ask, look, is this on the way to being an engaging, authentic short story that shows who you are? That quintessential college essay paragraph, it is not engaging. It's not authentic. Short story writing, yeah, maybe. Is it showing who he is? If he's a horrible person and a jerk, yeah, but he's not. I've come to know him very well. He's a wonderful guy. It's just not him. And the role, are you telling the story like you're telling it around the campfire? No, he was telling it. He was trying to prove something. It was very analytical and trying to, puff up his vocabulary, all of that. So this is the first place I would go with a student who came to me with something like Spencer's version. I wouldn't worry about anything else, because if they aren't hitting these, it's just like full stop, rethink what's happening. Now, this is part, like I said, it's like, how do you get them on the same page? Oh, do you have information for, oh, yes. So this is what we call the write like a pro process. And I don't think, I went to a high school. I was very fortunate, incredible writing program. I work with a lot of kids who have gone, just, they write well. They really know how to do the 5-paragraph essays. They know how to write analytical papers. And they have a lot of skills, but this builds on top of that. And what I found over the years is that really professional writers and communicators, whether a novelist or a journalist, marketing people, people who make political speeches, they start with their strong foundation, knowing their audience, their intention, and their role. I actually did that for this webinar. I map all of that out very particularly. I have about a page just defining the audience, my intention, and my role and perspective for a webinar like this, to make sure that I'm speaking to you. And then they break the work down into 3 phases. First, being a thinker, just dealing with ideas and raw content. That's it. Don't worry about, I don't worry about language. I don't worry about structure. I don't worry about the message. Like, are there some ideas and content in there? And I'm going to dig deeper into all of this as we go. Then being a storyteller, that's where they start creating their message and structure and strategy. So in this first thinker phase, for me, I have my students come up with 25 to 40 call them story starters, bullet point lists, very, very quick, and have a version of, you could call it, I call it write a bunch of crap, but free writing or stream of consciousness, a little bit guided, and they very quickly write between 8,000 and 10,000 words on a whole bunch of stories. Then they go into the storyteller phase where they start exploring what they've written, and they start discovering things about themselves they didn't know, and they're able to craft a message and start making some choices and create a structure about it, around it, and then end up with a rough draft. That's when I deal with tone and language. And sometimes the end of the story, their rough draft is horrifically, horribly written. The tone is off. It is like boring and everything. But then when at least they know the structure of it, then in the writer phase, they can bring it to life. They can deal with tone and language and openings and endings and transitions and all of that. So when I look at this, whoops, that's not what I wanted. So again, this becomes like the first cut, and this is the big picture process. So I have them at least in a way of breaking down how to think about the different aspects of writing. I realized just a couple of days ago, I've never even told John this, when I was an English teacher for a couple of years after college. It was just not the fit for me. But I just like could not read yet another essay about the Lord of the Flies. I was going absolutely nuts. And I created a 2-page handout. One page had feedback questions for content and ideas and argument, and the other page on structure and grammar and mechanics. And I had kids review each other's essays. And I realized it's essentially what I do today. I had no idea. So it actually, that simplified my life then, and having a structure and a language simplifies it here. So I'm going to show you the beginning of another essay. Remember I said, could you show the previous, this one? Absolutely. And I'm going to show this again. This is going to come back, Barbara. And we'll send you all of this. So I'm going to show you, like I said, in the thinker phase, I have kids write thousands and thousands of words, and set a timer for 12 minutes. You can't stop your fingers from moving. And a student named Luca wrote about his car. And I'm going to read it quickly because it doesn't merit being read slowly, what popped out of his fingers. Got to take a breath because there's not a lot of punctuation. Red cherry red with black rubberish interior with leather steering wheel, Jeanberg stick added some crank windows that sometimes need a hand to slide them into place. Also, there are SIG windows that make up for the lack of an AC. The heater system is basically not there until I want to get out if the car or it is a hot day out, but then I just have to push the sticks down. Smells like gas and oil, partly because I like the smell and don't want to have the smell of pine trees in my old car. It gives it a traditional value and feel. Holy crap, the paint job is in pristine condition. Nad the engine, wowza. So you really can't talk about grammar here. It's an absolute disaster. But there are some things you can talk about. And that is you can ask questions in the foundation and in the thinker phases. So again, those foundation questions, and I'm not at the storyteller phase. I'm not at the writer phase. He's just getting his ideas out. He's like playing around and experimenting. And some kids, when they write this, it is actually pretty decent. Not Luca, but for some kids, it's really quite decent. So the tendency, it's like, yeah, I can start correcting grammar and working with sentences, but like, don't do that. Don't do that yet. So here are the questions. Has Tina Fey read what he wrote 1,000 times over? No, absolutely not. Is it on the way to being, know your audience, know your intention. Is it on the way to being an engaging, authentic short story that shows who you are? Yeah, absolutely. There's something about it that there's an energy to it that's kind of engaging. It's absolutely authentic. It's just like, he's just, here I am. Short story writing, presumably it's about his car and showing something about who he is. Yeah, I get a sense of his energy, his excitement. So there's something there. I get a little feel for a real human being. And know your role. Are you telling your story like you're talking to your friends around a campfire? Absolutely. This is not an academic perspective. I ask these questions every time I meet with students, over and over and over and over again. I burn it in these questions, these 3 little questions, into their brains. And it starts becoming second nature to them, so that they can start asking it of themselves in whatever they're doing. So again, getting them on the same page and talking in the same world and in the same language, absolutely critical at making my life easier and their life easier, at least to say, hey, am I going in the right direction? So then there's, excuse me, then can dive even deeper. So in that thinker phase, where it's just dealing with ideas and raw content, I have students take a personal character strength survey. It's a free survey called the VIA survey, and I'll be getting you resources for that. But one of the questions I ask is, which of your top 10 character strengths are coming through? In the final essay, when I work with kids, I want to see most or all of these. So for Luca, love, humor, creativity, gratitude, curiosity, humility, self-regulation, teamwork, zest, and honesty. In that sort of babble about his car, there's some humor. There's maybe some creativity. He's very grateful about the car. Talks a bit about like learning how it works. Zest, pure zest, like pure energy. So just in that 12-minute spurt of writing, he shows more of who he is than 80% of college essays. And we can look and see it. Now, sometimes the kids write and there's nothing. That's fine. Love, I've known him since he was 8. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He is so full of love and kindness, and that doesn't come through in this. But he's writing a lot more, so we can start looking to see. But this is a very simple way of saying, hey, are you doing this, this, and this? It's like their own little personal rubric. The second question in the thinker phase, do you have, now this I looked at a number of years ago, what's common in every effective essay? And I found there are 3 things. Every effective common essay only has 3 fundamental elements. There's stuff that happened. There's the in-the-moment experience, what you're thinking or feeling at the time, and deep thoughts, things that you see today that you didn't see when it happened. So these 3 questions, simple, straightforward questions, help students understand what's there or not there in their essays. And so that's just what I ask them again and again and again, almost every time I meet. And they start seeing it, and they start seeing what's working and what's missing. So I want to ask, are there any questions? John, do you have any thoughts before I go into sort of the next little section? Like, where are you? This is the very big picture. If I'm giving big picture concept, feedback for any students. And if not, everyone, you can just post a question in the chat or in the Q&A tab. Oh, there's a Q&A tab. That's right. No Q&As. Okay. Excuse me. So what I want to do now is go back to Spencer's first version, this quintessentially part of any American childhood, awful, awful essay with language issues, with what's your message? What are you talking about? Again, if we're looking at, like, there's almost no reason to go beyond this here, because he just fails. The answer is no. Okay, no need to give any more feedback on that because he's not ready for it. So, but this, he gave me a full essay. So I, saw this and said, okay, I can, think through it. Again, know your audience intention and role, and going deeper, character strengths and 3 types of content we just saw, the storyteller, message structure, and strategy. The questions I ask are about your intentions. That's your message. Like, I have students get very, very clear on what they want their message to be, what they want to communicate. And so we can say, hey, are these coming through or not? The content, is it, does the story make sense? So do the pieces generally fit together? And do you have a workable draft? Can be horribly written, can be boring. I don't care at this point. As long as it's something they can work with, I'm happy. So as kids are giving me drafts, this is where I stop on the feedback. And then as they get further into that writer phase, that's when I start talking about tone and vitality, readability, the openings and endings, transitions. Actually, the openings and endings, sometimes that's the very last thing I do. And I have them use placeholders that just say, awesome opening goes here, smooth transition goes here. Transitions, I just have them leave that placeholder until everything is pretty much perfect, because sometimes the transition is, if I delete those 2 words or take that last line of that paragraph and put it on its own line, it actually suddenly makes it a beautiful transition. So I'm not giving them feedback, and I don't want them to think about it at that time. There's one more incredibly important question, and that is, does Tina Fey care? Does she care? It's pretty extraordinary how many kids write things she just doesn't care about. Sometimes it's a lot of detail that just doesn't matter. Sometimes it's what other people were doing. Can be a whole range of things. And sometimes it's a very big story that they've included. And by asking that one simple question, does she actually care? Does your audience care about that thing? Suddenly they don't have to worry about rewriting it. They just delete it. And it becomes really, really simple. Again, it's asking the right questions. So the game is, like I said, get everyone on the same page. Get everyone speaking the same language. Now, this is the process I use, and we're going to share we have an online program. We give a free account to professionals. We have lots of resources so you can dig more deeply into this. But when you give feedback, make sure, if nothing else, they know their audience intention and role, and that you're giving them feedback based on where they are in the process. Okay, so let's see. So now what I'm going to do is go back and just kind of look at, here's Spencer's first version. Now, this is a disaster. This whole essay in every way, shape, or form was a disaster. He had 3.5 weeks. I spent a lot of time with him. And I started we got together at the coffee shop, and I had him read just the first sentence. I said, pretend you're an admissions officer. You know nothing about this person. Read the first sentence. And I had a Word document and just that one sentence. And he read something that always defined me as the time I spent as a camper at summer camp. And he kind of looked and like, like that's kind of boring. Then I had him read the quintessentially part of any American childhood sentence. And he was sort of like looking a little confused. And then he read, as student body president. By that sentence, he looked like he was going to throw up. And in about 3 minutes, he like rethought everything. He was able just like, oh, I went really wrong. So at the beginning, I don't have to think about anything else. We spent 3.5 weeks. I met with him a couple times a week, and he did tons and tons of work at home. And we'll be sharing this essay. We have a great sample essay page with tons of essays, and this is one of them. This is how his essay starts. I lost it when Darius peed in the girls' cabin. It was the end, the twisted climax of a week I will always associate with pure, unbridled pain. Darius had been building to this all week. This 11-year-old had become my sole responsibility for the week he was at Camp Orkyla, and he was systematically breaking me down. Now, just on this, would people give, like, as we're talking, what feedback would you give? But giving it from the perspective of, is this something Tina Fey has read 1,000 times? Is it, excuse me, is it on the way, or is it, this is a finished essay, is it engaging, authentic, a short story showing who he is? And is he telling it like he's just telling it around the campfire? So what would folks say to that? Just add that to the chat. That's, sometimes students send me finished essays. And again, I'm saying kind of the same thing, because drilling this in is, I laughed out loud. Yes, Barbara, absolutely. This actually, by the way, is the essay. There are 3 versions of this essay, actually. It's supposed to say final version. And the workshop, you want to keep reading, much more approachable, absolutely intriguing opening. This would wake me, yes, because their lives are they're so bored. I can't imagine it. This is what they're dying for. But kids don't know that. And again, having them on the same page. The webinar tomorrow night is the workshop I've led for how many thousands and thousands of people, breaking down the 3 versions. They'll get audience, intention, and role, thinker, storyteller, and writer. And there's an online version on the resource page that we'll be sharing with you. So you can share that, and they can just sort of the self-directed version of the workshop I'm doing tomorrow night. You can feel free to use that in your classes. But boy, you want to get every kid talking that same language. It will make your life easier and their life easier. So I'm going to move on to, approachable, want to keep reading. Absolutely. So Luke is rich hair, red with black rubbish interior. I love it because it's the worst stuff I've ever read, but this is the beginning of his essay. Also, we'll be sharing that. It's cherry red, old, and all mine. It's a 1970 VW Beetle. It's not practical, but it's me. And I want to give it, your comments as well as I read this. It's not practical, but it's me. My dinosaur of a car has a special type of comfort. My friends don't agree. They often regret getting in. Why is it so loud? Is it supposed to smell like gas? I don't want to die. This is very different. He went through, now he started with me. So I guided him through the whole process, and he went through that thinker, storyteller, and writer process in those phases. But at each point, that's exactly it. That his car looks like that is absolutely terrifying, that car. But wonderful essay, this magical essay that really shows his strengths, that shows his, both his, like how his mind works. He's an engineer, really. And he is so full of love. And the second half of the essay is about his relationship with his brother. And he was able to do this brilliant job of relating cars and his relationship and creating a really magical essay. Considering where he started, awesome. Yeah. So they all, and again, that's why I want kids writing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of horrible, horrible stuff without thinking. Just get their ideas out, because it's hard to take that perspective. I've never quite thought of it this way until just this moment. This is great. It's hard to play the role of I'm a teenager telling my story like I'm talking to friends around a campfire if you're trying to spell correctly, if you're trying to make a point, if you're trying to have some structure or message. I don't know how you can do that, because the thinking, the ideas, just the natural way human beings tell stories gets interrupted over and over again. So I work with kids to make sure they quickly learn how to get stuff out quickly, and a lot of it. Again, excuse me, these are the pieces. These 6: audience, intention, and role as part of the foundation, thinker, storyteller, writer. All the questions fit into that. And I'm going to get much more detailed in just a moment. Any question, like put your questions in there. Now I am going to give you, this would be a good time. John, would you share the, okay, the Read Like a Pro, oh, there we go. So I'm going to pop up the Read Like a Pro handout. And this is a one-page handout. I actually do have an image of it. A one-page handout looks like this, that very quickly lets anyone look at any college essay, whether it's one they're writing or in process, or one that you find online. One you write now, there's a lot of essays online that are really bad, but say they're really good. And at that conference in Houston 6 weeks ago, I was blown away at how many counselors and consultants told me that they were frustrated that the examples and the essays that they were finding were just off. They weren't accessible to students, or they sounded like they were trying too hard. And just because the kid got into Harvard doesn't mean that the essay was a good essay. So this is a wonderful, wonderful tool to give students or parents, or for yourself as you're going through. And when you download it, you'll see. And am I sharing that? Oh, preview. Oh, look at that. What's that button do? Oh, look at this. So John, can they see this? I'm not sure. I no longer, I'm discovering all sorts of things about Big Marker here. But in any case, download this and we'll send it to you. It's on the resource page. Is it built on a strong foundation? Does it have 3 types of content? And is it well written? And it captures all of the aspects. And I'll also be sharing, these are older kind of legacy forms that I use, and later I'll be sending updates. So the deeper feedback I give, and I'm going to switch to now another slide. Actually, let me just talk here a moment. Okay, so chat, considering we're started, I've shared in the handouts tab. Is it there? Yes. So again, this is about quick, actionable, and effective, and actionable college feedback. So I am profoundly and deeply lazy. I don't want to be giving feedback all day long. I don't want to be saying the same things over and over and over and over again. And so I make a lot of work for myself to create these tools that then make it easy for me to give feedback, and easier for students to give feedback, and easy for you to give feedback as well. What I like doing is thinking in terms of systems and the complexity and how everything interacts and relates. I know some of you may not have much time to actually give a lot of guidance to students in essays, and they just sort of have to do it. Some of you may have a program and a structure to do it. But again, whatever you do, get them on the same page, at least using the free resources. But I want to now dive in. I worked with a student, and this is something that Marco Learning and I and EssayQuest are working on together, sort of a product and a way of giving feedback to Marco's students on college essays, because I know this is what I love about Marco, is they're so good at giving written feedback. And it's something that I do. This is a real student from, this is 2 weeks, or October 21st, a couple weeks ago. Feedback on, his name is not Bugs Bunny, but Bugs Bunny's Common Application essay. I had already given him 1 or 2 rounds of earlier feedback. And I'm going to walk through this. Whoops, I'm on the wrong form here. I'm going to walk through slides. There we go. There we go. I'm going to walk through this very quickly to show you how structured feedback can be. And it was very, very easy to give him in-depth structured feedback. And what he said to me was, it was just like perfect because it followed the logic of the process. So just, very quick, like, hey, great job, Bugs Bunny. Same questions. Is your essay built on a strong foundation? Is it written for your audience? Does it meet the big picture intention? Engaging, authentic short story writing. And I'm able to just like very quickly kind of answer the question. Very, very simple. Does it play the right role? The thinker phase. Does it have, does it have stuff that happens, show your in the moment experience, and share some deep thoughts? He absolutely did those. A couple of other questions: anything negative, or would an incoming freshman be happy to have you? The storyteller phase: do at least 5 of your top 10 strengths come through? And I just listed out the strengths, and some were, yes, humor. Love was yes. Humor, no. It was very kind of dull and lifeless. Do your other intentions come through? His were a good leader and a teacher. I like sharing my knowledge, get very interested in something when I get started. I like branching out. Don't just stick with one exact thing for a long time. And again, because I'm very specific on what he says his message is, I was able to pick up on this. For him, branching out was, he's a fisherman, and he was fishing for bass, and then he tried fly fishing. I don't fish. To me, that's fishing. That's all the same thing. To him, that's like branching out into a whole new world. So I was able to give, and I kind of realized that's, I think, what he was doing. And I was able to say, if that's what you meant by branching out, that doesn't translate to non-fishermen. Is there a structure that works? Yes, there was. And there were some ideas that he could play with. And I just say, I'll share ideas of what you could do in the what's next section. And then the writer phase: does your overall tone come through? I didn't see what that was, so I don't know. It was very matter of fact and low key. Does your tone vary? No, it's consistent. It made it really boring to read, very droning. And again, I'll share ideas of what you could do. Does your essay have vitality? Does it bring you to life? No, again, it was related to tone. Does it flow from start to finish? So these questions, I was just able to very, very quickly answer these, fill in the blanks. And because he was sending this to me as a, hey, here's my finished essay. This well-written now starts being relevant. Flow start from finish. Does it grab attention? Are the transitions smooth? Does it end like a pro? And I said, no, it just seems to stop in the middle of a thought. And then, is it well written? So for the questions I ask are, everything is there for a reason. And that's every idea, sentence, and word has to serve a purpose. Adverbs. Stephen King says the road to hell is paved with adverbs. Get rid of the adverbs. Get rid of like 90% of the adverbs. It's easy to read, and it's error-free. So those are kind of the, yeah, okay, now it's done. Now I can start talking about this. I tell students, Shar says, I tell students that the Comment app is like the pulse behind the, I like that, is the pulse behind the application. It should reveal who they are, their inner being. This means that there'll be moments of vulnerability as they reflect their inner motivations, personality, and etc. Absolutely, Shar. That's, it's like that, bring people to life, like really, like, who am I, that authentic self. This last page is the what's next. I have some standard things: looking for gaps, keep eye on intentions. The online program that we have, and I'll show you that briefly, just some screenshots from it, is very, very structured. And I have activities for absolutely every step of the process. It breaks the writing process down step by step by step by step by step. So for him, he really needed to do some work on the tone and reader experience. And so choose your tone and reader experience and where they shift are 2 things that I suggested. Bring your essay new to life. There's some fancy writing tricks. And what I recommended was adding some dialogue, so we can start hearing his voice. Then pick up simple new writing tricks, some activities. Sometimes it's as simple as look for the word very and delete the word very. Adverbs, adjectives, Mark Twain said something like adjectives are like dandelions. The first few are really pretty, but pretty soon they take over your field. So just basic elements of writing. And for him, it was more scan for inspiration, just kind of look and see opportunities. And making it flow, learn to shrink your sentences is a tool I used. He was a little bit wordy and could have trimmed down a lot. Then mixing things up, grab attention, make smooth transitions. And unlike with Pro, for him, those are the activities that would give him what he needed. And his final version was night and day. And so with relatively, again, that word actionable, it made sense. It fit into the framework he's been working with, and I was able to give him feedback. Now, you are not using this framework particularly. You may end up using it in the future, but whatever you do as you're thinking about giving feedback, give them something, and then give them the feedback when they need it. Okay, let me stop this. Again, if you have questions, thoughts, anything like that, that form, I'm going to share the older version of that. It's a legacy. Actually, John, would you share the legacy handout? I think is what it's called. Slides. And there we go for Big Marco. No, I still want this. Where was I? So that's if you're doing written feedback, incredibly powerful. How's the time? 10 minutes. Perfect. Okay, back to the slides. So now, up until now, everything I've said is for the Common App essay. That's it. That's the one essay that I've been talking about. That's not the only essay they're going to write. They're going to write a lot more essays. Let me go back to the slides. Where's that slide? And there we go. So the trick in the Common App essay, like what Char writes, it's the pulse behind their application. I love that. Fundamentally, their goal is to make sad Tina Fey happy Tina Fey. Really, that's what they want to do in these essays. Make Tina Fey say, wow, I like you. I get a sense of who you are. I want to learn more about you. And I want to then see if you're going to be a fit for this school. Now, one of the most common, there are several common types of supplemental essays. One of the most common ones is, why this college? Like, why do you want to come here? Why is the school a good fit? The whole foundation changes. It's a whole new foundation. So the three things they need to know, your audience is now happy Tina Fey. She's read your essay, likes you, and is looking for reasons to consider you and wants to learn more about you. Entirely new audience. Your intention is to answer the prompt, not to tell a story. Now, sometimes the way that it's phrased, a story may be appropriate, but it doesn't have to be a story. Show you've done the research and know the school. Show you know what kind of school will work for you. Show that you're clear that the school is a great fit for you. So as you're giving feedback on these essays, those are the questions to ask. Are you doing those things? In your role, you're not a teenager telling a story around a campfire. You're a self-aware young adult who's done the research about the school program and the thinking about kind of yourself, and is this a match? So this structure, audience intention and role, translates to any kind of writing or communication. Is there a list of activities that you recommend? Yes, I will talk a little bit about that. We have our Essay Quest program does that. That's something we license, and at the same time, we're committed that anyone who needs it, we make it work so that you can do that. So we'll talk about that, Nyla. But when we're talking feedback, get clear on the foundation. Now, I do this. I talk with kids. I sometimes work with kids, usually sophomores and juniors on maybe an academic paper, or they're doing a speech because they're running for class president or something like that. I have them go through audience intention and role. So for the teachers there, I say, who's your English teacher? What does your English teacher care about? Different English teachers focus on sort of different aspects of writing. What's your intention? Is it to write a clear and compelling academic argument? Maybe get a little more detailed based on the prompt. and know your role. Well, it's an academic role. So even there, I start grounding them in that. And if they're sort of off all over the place, get them reoriented. So this is the why this college. Another common essay is the intellectual interests, or why do you want to study this major or choose this major? Again, audience, happy Tina Fey, your intention, answer the prompt, you engage with the subject academically or intellectually, you know your interest, thought about what you want to learn in college, and demonstrate anything above something, because I can't see my slide, the rest of the slide above what you've already shared, and you're a self-aware young adult who has done the thinking. Now, then the third one I do want to share is for the University of California, personal insight questions. Totally different world. These are the ones coming up. These are the ones I'll be working on with kids in the next 2 weeks, because it's due November 30th. Your audience is Tina Fey is frazzled and tired and reading folders at an insane speed. They skim for information. That's what they're after. They want data. They do not want stories at University of California. Straightforward. Bam, this is what I did. These are my accomplishments, or this was the struggle, whatever it is. Straightforward, easy to read, something they can pick up skimming. So the intention, answer the prompt. It's not a story, definitely. Write an easy to read, straightforward, authentic, informational essay. Show different aspects of yourself through the 4 essays. They have 8 prompts, and you choose 4. And their role is a self-aware young adult who communicates intentionally and efficiently. Super, super important to get the foundation right for each type of essay. But once you've gone through them and they understand that foundation is so important, it makes it a lot easier to just shift it, and then you can talk to them. This is really what simplifies my life, because by the time I'm working with them on supplementals, they're masters at thinking in terms of these different steps. So again, the 2 downloads, I think, John, you've offered both. The How to Read Any College Essay Like a Pro, absolutely download that. That's also on the resource page. And these feedback forms, these are older. They still work really well, and we'll be doing updated ones that we can share later. So just have a couple of minutes left, and we'll stay after for Q&A. Look, people work in different ways. This is, if there are any Williams graduates here, you will know this. One of the most famous sort of saying at Williams is the ideal college is Mark Hopkins. Mark Hopkins was a famous professor in the 19th century. The ideal college is Mark Hopkins on one end of a log and a student on the other. And that was President James Garfield went to Williams. This is Sean. He was my very first student when I started doing this for a business. And that's where we met. Now, most of you don't meet kids by crawling through muddy swamps and getting on a log. So you can adapt this to whatever kind of relationship. And remember, you have an audience. That's your student. You have intentions. You have a role. And we actually have a webinar where I really explore a lot of that more that we may lead again. But when I know my role and my audience and my intention when I'm working with students, and it's also for the individual student, it just makes my life a lot easier. How much time? We have 3 minutes. And as I'm ending up, put questions in there in the Q&A and whatever, so we can do that. Now, I have mentioned EssayQuest. EssayQuest is a self-directed, teen-tested, nothing like school online program. And it guides students step by step through the entire process. Starting with called College Essays 101, and we have a free version of that on the resource page. And John, can you pop up the resource via the resource page pop-up, however that works? So you can go to that resource page. So go to that, sort of tag that link. We'll also share that in a follow-up email. And there's tons of resources. There's sample essays, all sorts of things. And that's still the version for the conference, so kind of ignore that. Now, EssayQuest, you can create a free account for EssayQuest. We license it to schools. We license it to independent consultants. Families can purchase it independently, and we will always work with anyone who wants it. We'll never let finances get in the way. But it becomes a step-by-step way to guide students through the process much more easily. Not sure what happened to these awful screenshots, but we spent 8 years refining it. And someone asked, I think Nyla, activities. This is the step-by-step activities that we guide kids through. Very, very structured. They love it. It simplifies their lives, simplifies my life, because like I said, with Bugs Bunny's feedback, I can just say, go to this page, do the stuff. And you can learn more about that. And again, sample essays, tons and tons of sample essays. There are 40 essays right now baked into Essay Quest that kids read over and over. And John, can you also then pop up the link for creating your free account? So everyone right now, while you're here, create your account. Just kind of pull that up. If you just write Marco webinar, you can actually write anything where it says activation code. You can, as long as you write something, but if you put like Marco webinar or something like that, that would be great. And then finally, these are kind of things. Again, the professional resources, and there's a link also to Essay Quest on there to get your account. Tomorrow night, I am doing the leading with Marco, 7 secrets for a great college essay. Love to have you there if you'd like to come. That's the same content that uses Spencer's 3 essays and then more, and really digs deeply. Kids will come out on the same page. And then you can also share Essay Quest with students as well. I want to hide this. For there, they can register, they can purchase it, but they can get the free College Essays 101 course there. It's 20 minutes self-directed. So that is what I have got. Thank you so much. I'm on a mission to save the Tina Feys of the world from the suffering that they have. The teachers and counselors and consultants, we just want to make your lives easier, your students' lives easier, so that they can have the experience of writing the best essays they possibly can and making a learning and growing process and experience. So thank you so very much for being here. We'll follow up with all these resources, and we're going to be creating more resources. And is there an activation code? You honestly can put anything, but if you just put the Marco webinar, as long as there's something in that box. I'm cheating. Informative fun. Thank you. And you're very, very welcome. You're very, very welcome. And there's John. Hi, John.
Great. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording right here.